The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished black stone. 12 seats rose in a circle, each one carved from materials found only on the homeworlds of the elder species. For 40,000 years, these 12 races had ruled the galaxy. They had watched empires rise and fall. They had guided younger species toward civilization. They had maintained order across 100,000 star systems. And now they faced a problem they had not expected: humanity. High Counselor Rethvan of the Korvathi leaned forward in his seat. His gray skin caught the light of the central hologram, which displayed a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. Earth. Such an insignificant world in such an insignificant corner of the galaxy. Yet this tiny planet had produced a species that now threatened everything the Council had built. 3 years, Rethvan said, his voice echoing through the chamber. 3 years since they achieved faster-than-light travel. In that time, they have established colonies on 4 worlds. They have built a fleet of 200 vessels. They have developed weapons that rival our own. The other counselors shifted in their seats. Some showed fear. Others showed anger. All of them understood the danger. The Velthari took 2,000 years to reach this level of development, said Counselor Sireth of the Mindari. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence as she studied the hologram. The Korvathi took 3,000. Even my own people required 1,500 years after achieving FTL capability, and the humans have done it in 3 years, Rethvan finished. They learn too fast. They adapt too quickly. They breed like insects and think like predators. Counselor Valith of the Sindari raised one slender hand. She was the youngest member of the council, having served for only 800 years. Her silver hair flowed like water down her back, and her pale blue skin seemed to glow in the dim light. Perhaps we are overreacting, she said. Humans are still a young species. They have not yet proven themselves hostile. Should we not give them the chance to join our civilization peacefully? Rethvan turned his cold eyes toward her. We have given 17 species that chance over the past 40,000 years. Do you know what happened to them? Valith did not answer. She knew the history well enough. They grew strong, Rethvan continued. They challenged our authority. They threatened the stability we had worked so hard to create, and so we were forced to take action. We contained them. We controlled them. We ensured they could never threaten the greater good of the galaxy. He gestured toward the hologram, and it changed to show images of those 17 species. The Velthari, once proud warriors, now served as laborers in Korvathi factories. The Drethani, who had dreamed of building their own empire, had been reduced to a servant class. The Orinthi, the Selvani, the Krothax, all of them had been broken, their cultures destroyed, their potential crushed beneath the weight of council authority. These species were dangerous, Rethvan said, but they were nothing compared to humans. The others took centuries to become threats. Humans are becoming a threat in decades. If we wait too long, we will not be able to stop them. The chamber fell silent. The counselors looked at each other, and in their ancient eyes, there was a shared understanding. They had not maintained power for 40,000 years by showing mercy to those who might one day challenge them. What do you propose? Asked Counselor Thrinix of the Ashkari. Rethvan smiled. It was not a kind smile. We will offer them a treaty, he said. Standard integration terms. We will tell them that all new species must accept certain restrictions during their probationary period. They will be limited to 3-star systems. They will be forbidden from developing new weapons. They will be required to surrender their FTL research to the Council for review. And if they refuse? Valith asked. They will refuse, Rethvan said with certainty. Humans are proud. They are stubborn. They will never accept such terms willingly. And when they refuse, we will have our justification. He touched a control on his seat, and the hologram changed again. It now showed a massive fleet of warships gathered at the edge of a star system, 600 vessels from 9 different species, armed with weapons that could destroy entire planets. The combined armada has already been positioned, Rethvan said. They wait at the edge of the Sol system, hidden from human sensors. When humanity rejects our treaty, the fleet will strike. Their colonies will fall within hours. Their homeworld will be surrounded within a day, and their species will learn what happens to those who threaten the Council's authority. Valith stared at the hologram of the fleet. Her stomach turned with unease, but she said nothing. She had learned long ago that speaking against Rethvan was pointless. He had the support of the other counselors. He had the power of the Korvathi military behind him, and he had the cold certainty of someone who had done this many times before. "I will go myself," she said finally. "I will deliver the treaty to the humans. Perhaps I can convince them to accept." Rithvan's smile widened. "I appreciate your optimism, Valeth, but do not waste too much effort. The outcome is already decided." 3 weeks later, Ambassador Valeth's diplomatic vessel entered the Sol system. She had traveled to many worlds during her centuries of service. She had seen planets of crystal and ice, worlds where the sky burned with eternal fire, moons that sang with the voices of ancient machines. But she had never seen a system quite like this one. It was so ordinary. A yellow star, 8 planets, countless rocks and debris floating in the void. There was nothing special about it, nothing that would explain why this unremarkable corner of the galaxy had produced such a remarkable species. Her ship's sensors detected the human vessels long before she reached Earth. 200 of them, scattered throughout the system in patrol patterns that revealed a surprising level of tactical sophistication. They had been expecting her. Of course they had. The Council had announced her visit weeks in advance. What surprised Valeth was the design of the human ships. They were ugly things, all sharp angles and exposed weapons. They lacked the elegant curves of Sindari vessels or the organic shapes of Mindari cruisers, but there was something about them that made her uncomfortable. They looked like tools designed for a single purpose: war. She pushed the thought away as her ship approached Earth. The planet grew larger in her view screen, its blue oceans and green continents glowing in the light of its sun. It was beautiful, she had to admit, a living world, teeming with life. It seemed almost cruel to think about what would happen to it if the humans refused the treaty. Her ship landed on a platform outside the United Earth Parliament building in Geneva. A delegation of humans waited for her, dressed in formal clothing that seemed uncomfortable and impractical. Their leader was a woman named Director Chen Wei, who served as the head of Earth's diplomatic corps. Valeth studied the humans as she descended from her vessel. They were smaller than she had expected, with soft skin and fragile bodies. Their eyes were small and weak, unable to see the full spectrum of light that Sindari eyes could perceive. Their lifespans were pathetically short, a mere century if they were lucky, and yet there was something in their eyes that gave her pause. A sharpness, a hunger. These were not the eyes of prey animals. These were the eyes of predators. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Valeth," Director Chen said with a bow. "We are honored by your visit." Valeth returned the gesture. "Thank you, Director Chen. I bring greetings from the Galactic Council. We are pleased that humanity has joined the community of spacefaring species." The pleasantries continued as they walked into the Parliament building. Valeth noted everything she saw. The security guards with their primitive projectile weapons, the surveillance systems that watched from every corner, the nervous energy that seemed to fill the air. The humans were excited about this visit. They saw it as a new beginning, a chance to take their place among the stars. They had no idea what was really coming. The treaty presentation took place in the Parliament's main chamber. Representatives from every nation on Earth had gathered to hear the Council's offer. They sat in rows of seats that rose toward the ceiling, their faces a mix of hope and suspicion. Valeth stood at the center of the chamber, her silver hair catching the light of the holographic displays around her. She had given this speech many times before, to many different species. The words came easily. "The Galactic Council welcomes humanity to the interstellar community," she began. "For 40,000 years, we have guided younger species toward peace and prosperity. We have shared our knowledge, our technology, our wisdom, and now we extend the same offer to you." She gestured, and a holographic display of the treaty appeared in the air above her. "These are the standard integration terms that all new species must accept. They are designed to ensure stability during your probationary period. Once you have proven yourselves trustworthy, these restrictions will be lifted, and you will enjoy full membership in the galactic community." She outlined the terms: the limitation to 3 star systems, the ban on weapons development, the surrender of FTL research. As she spoke, she watched the faces of the human representatives. She saw confusion turn to disbelief, disbelief turn to anger. Director Chen was the first to speak. "Ambassador, these terms seem restrictive. You mentioned that all new species must accept them. Can you provide examples of other species that have gone through this process?" Valeth had prepared for this question. "Of course. The Velthari, the Drethani, and the Orinthi all accepted similar terms during their integration periods. They are now valued members of the galactic community. It was not technically a lie. Those species were members of the galactic community. They simply had no power, no freedom, and no future. But the humans did not need to know that. A murmur ran through the chamber. The representatives whispered to each other, their faces dark with suspicion. Valeth felt a flicker of something she had not expected. Guilt. She pushed it away. This was necessary. The Council knew what was best for the galaxy. Humans were dangerous. They had to be controlled before they became uncontrollable. "We will need time to consider your offer," Director Chen said finally. "These are significant decisions that affect the future of our entire species." Valeth nodded. "Of course. The Council understands. You have 7 days to accept or reject the treaty. After that, we will need an answer." She did not mention what would happen if they rejected it. She did not need to. The humans would learn soon enough. The next 7 days were the longest of Valeth's life. She remained on Earth, officially to answer questions and provide guidance. In reality, she was there to observe, to report, to make sure the humans did not do anything unexpected. But the humans surprised her. They did not panic. They did not argue among themselves. Instead, they came together with a unity that she had rarely seen in any species. Representatives who had been political enemies for decades now worked side by side. Scientists shared research freely. Military leaders coordinated their forces without jealousy or rivalry. Valeth watched them through surveillance drones that floated invisibly through their cities. She saw parents holding their children, promising them that everything would be all right. She saw soldiers training harder than ever, preparing for a threat they did not fully understand. She saw scientists working through the night, desperately trying to understand the technology that might soon be used against them. And she saw something else. Something that troubled her more than anything. Hope. These humans believed they could survive. They believed they could overcome whatever challenges lay ahead. They had faced extinction before ice ages, plagues, wars that killed millions, and they had always survived. They looked at the stars with the same determination that their ancestors had shown when they crossed oceans in wooden boats. On the 5th day, Valeth received a message from High Counselor Rethvan. "The fleet is ready," he said, his gray face filling her view screen. "We expect the humans to reject the treaty within the next 2 days. When they do, the attack will begin immediately. You should prepare to evacuate." "Understood," Valeth said. But as she ended the transmission, she felt something she had not felt in centuries: doubt. She thought about the 17 species that had come before. She thought about their cultures, their dreams, their potential, all of it crushed beneath the weight of Council authority. She thought about what the galaxy might have looked like if those species had been allowed to grow, to create, to become what they were meant to be. And she thought about the humans. These strange, fragile, impossibly determined creatures who had somehow achieved in 3 years what other species took millennia to accomplish. What might they become if they were given the chance? But it was too late for such thoughts. The fleet was in position. The attack was planned, and Valeth was just one counselor against 11. She could do nothing but watch. On the 7th day, Director Chen requested a final meeting. They met in a small conference room, just the two of them. Chen looked tired. Dark circles hung under her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she poured tea into 2 cups. "I wanted to thank you personally," Chen said, pushing 1 cup toward Valeth. "These past 7 days have been difficult, but you have been patient with us. Kind, even." Valeth accepted the cup but did not drink. "You do not need to thank me, Director. I am simply doing my duty." Chen smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "I know what you're here for, Ambassador. I know what the Council really wants." Valeth's blood ran cold. "I do not understand. You're here to deliver an ultimatum," Chen said quietly. "Not an invitation. The terms you offered, they're not standard procedure. They're a trap. And if we refuse, something very bad is going to happen to us." Valeth said nothing. She could not deny it. She could not confirm it. She could only sit in silence as this human woman looked at her with eyes that saw far too much. "We're going to refuse," Chen continued. "We have to. We can't accept terms that would make us slaves in everything but name. But I wanted you to know. We don't blame you. We know you're just the messenger." She reached across the table and touched Valeth's hand. Her skin was warm, soft, fragile, so different from Sindari's skin. "I hope you'll remember us," Chen said. "When this is over, I hope you'll remember that we tried to be friends." Valith pulled her hand away. Her throat was tight, and her eyes burned with tears she had not shed in centuries. "I should go," she said. "I need to prepare for your response." She stood and walked toward the door. But before she left, she stopped and turned back. "Director Chen," she said, "for what it is worth, I am sorry." Then she was gone, walking quickly through the corridors of the Parliament building, trying not to think about what was about to happen. Behind her, Chen Wei sat alone in the conference room, staring at the 2 cups of tea that would never be drunk. The clock was ticking. In 2 days, Earth would give its answer, and then the fleet would strike. Admiral Yuki Tanaka had not slept in 3 days. She stood at the center of the Space Defense Force Command Center, buried deep beneath the mountains of Japan. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing the positions of every human ship in the solar system, 200 vessels, 200 crews who trusted her to keep them alive. And somewhere out there, something was wrong. Tanaka had spent her entire life studying war. She had graduated first in her class from the Naval Academy. She had commanded ships during the Mars Rebellion and the Europa Crisis. She had written books on military strategy that were now required reading for every officer in the fleet. And every instinct she had developed over those decades was screaming at her now. The treaty was wrong. The whole situation was wrong. She had studied the terms that Ambassador Valith had presented. On the surface, they seemed reasonable. New species, accepting restrictions during a probationary period. Standard procedure, the ambassador had said. Nothing unusual. But Tanaka had spent too many years looking for traps to miss this one. The restrictions were too specific. They targeted exactly the things that made humanity strong. Their rapid expansion, their weapons development, their FTL technology. It was as if someone had studied humanity carefully and designed the perfect cage to contain them. That was not how bureaucracies worked. Bureaucracies created broad, general rules that applied to everyone. They did not create targeted restrictions designed for specific species. Unless they were lying, Tanaka turned to her intelligence chief, Colonel Marcus Webb. He was a thin man with pale skin and tired eyes, the kind of person who disappeared in crowds but noticed everything. "I want everything we have on the Galactic Council," she said. "Every piece of data, every communication, every rumor. I want to know who they really are." Webb nodded. "Already working on it, Admiral. But the Council has been around for 40,000 years. That's a lot of history to dig through. Focus on recent events, the last few centuries. Look for patterns. Look for other species that went through this integration process. Find out what happened to them." "Yes, ma'am." Webb disappeared into the maze of workstations that filled the command center. Tanaka watched him go, then turned back to the holographic displays. The ambassador's ship sat in orbit around Earth, a sleek silver vessel that seemed to glow with its own inner light. "Beautiful, elegant, dangerous. Communications," Tanaka said. "I want a full analysis of that ship's transmission logs, everything it has sent or received since it entered our system." A young lieutenant looked up from her station. "Admiral, that would require accessing their communications array. If they detect us." "They won't detect us," Tanaka said. "Our electronic warfare capabilities are more advanced than they realize. They think we're primitives playing with new toys. Let's use that assumption against them." The lieutenant hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The next 12 hours were the longest of Tanaka's career. Her teams worked around the clock, probing the Sindari vessel's systems with tools that the Council had never seen. Human hackers had spent decades breaking into the most secure systems on Earth. Compared to the challenges they had faced, alien encryption was almost laughably simple. The elder species had grown complacent. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to face a real challenge. Their security systems were based on the assumption that younger species would never be able to crack them. They had not counted on humanity. The first breakthrough came at 0300 hours. Lieutenant Kim Soo-yeon, a brilliant young cryptographer who had been recruited straight out of university, managed to access the ship's internal communications network. From there, she traced the connections back to the Council's main servers, and what she found changed everything. "Admiral," Kim said, her voice trembling. "You need to see this." Tanaka walked to her station and looked at the screen. It showed a map of the Sol system, with Earth at the center. But there was something else on the map, something that should not have been there. 600 icons, arranged in a formation just beyond the orbit of Neptune. Ships, warships, an entire armada hidden at the edge of their system. How did we miss this? Tanaka demanded. They're using some kind of stealth technology, Kim said. Our sensors can't detect them, but their own communications reference them constantly. They call it the Combined Armada. 600 vessels from 9 different species. Tanaka stared at the screen. Her mind raced through the implications. An armada that size could destroy Earth's entire fleet in a matter of hours. They could bombard the planet from orbit, reducing cities to ash. They could land troops on every continent simultaneously. And they had been waiting there, hidden, while the ambassador smiled and talked about integration. What else have you found? Tanaka asked. Kim's hands trembled as she pulled up more files. Everything, Admiral. The Council's private deliberations, their attack plans, their entire history. She pressed a button, and a recording began to play. It showed the Council chamber, with High Counselor Rethvan speaking to the other members. Humans are infant predators, Rethvan said, his voice dripping with contempt. They must be declawed before they learn to hunt. If we wait too long, they will become uncontrollable. Better to crush them now, while they are still weak. Another counselor spoke. What about their potential? Some of our scientists believe they could achieve great things if properly guided. Rethvan laughed. It was an ugly sound. We do not guide potential threats. We eliminate them. The humans will be subjugated, their military destroyed, their population re-educated. In a century, they will be just like the Velthari and the Drithani, useful servants who know their place. The recording ended. Tanaka stood in silence, her jaw clenched tight. Around her, the command center had gone quiet. Every officer was staring at the screen, their faces pale with shock. There's more, Kim said quietly. They've done this before. 17 times over the past 40,000 years. Every species that showed too much potential was targeted, conquered, and reduced to servitude. The Council doesn't integrate new species. It crushes them. She pulled up images of those 17 species. The Velthari, once warriors, now broken. The Drethani, their cities in ruins. The Orinthi, their culture erased. Species after species, their stories all the same. Contacted by the Council, offered a treaty, then destroyed when they refused. They never had a chance, Kim said. None of them knew what was coming. They trusted the Council. They believed the lies. Tanaka took a deep breath. She had been prepared for bad news. She had not been prepared for this, but she was a soldier. She had trained her entire life to face impossible situations, and right now, her people needed her to be strong. Download everything, she ordered. Every file, every recording, every piece of evidence. Then erase our tracks. I don't want them to know we were in their systems. What are we going to do with it? Webb asked. Tanaka looked at the image of the hidden fleet. 600 warships, waiting to destroy her world. An enemy that had been doing this for 40,000 years. A trap that had claimed 17 species before them. The Council expected humanity to be like the others. Alone, ignorant, helpless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. We're going to show the galaxy the truth, Tanaka said. But first, we need to show our own people. Get me a secure line to Parliament. I need to speak with the Emergency Council immediately. 4 hours later, Tanaka stood before the combined leaders of Earth. The Emergency Council consisted of the most powerful people on the planet. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and admirals. They had gathered in a secure bunker beneath Geneva, connected to each other through quantum encrypted communication links that could not be intercepted. Tanaka showed them everything. The hidden fleet, the Council's deliberations, the fate of the 17 species, the planned attack that would begin the moment humanity rejected the treaty. When she finished, the room was silent. Some of the leaders looked frightened. Others looked angry. All of them looked sick. President Morrison of the North American Union was the first to speak. How long do we have? 2 days, Tanaka said. Maybe less. The moment we give our answer to the treaty, the fleet will strike. They're expecting us to refuse. They want us to refuse. It gives them the excuse they need. And if we accept? Asked Premier Liu of the Asian Confederation. Then we become slaves, Tanaka said bluntly. Like the Velthari, like the Drithani. We surrender our ships, our weapons, our freedom. We spend the next century being re-educated until we forget what it meant to be human. Prime Minister Okonkwo of the African Alliance slammed her hand on the table. Then we fight. We may be outgunned, but we will not go quietly. Fighting is not enough, Tanaka said. Our fleet is outnumbered 3-1. Even if we threw every ship we have at them, we would lose. The Council has been doing this for 40,000 years. They know how to crush a younger species. Then what do you suggest? Morrison asked. Tanaka stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. We don't just fight. We change the rules of the game. The Council's power is based on two things: secrecy and isolation. They keep their actions hidden from the galaxy, and they make sure that each species they target is alone, with no allies to help them. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed a map of the galaxy. Thousands of star systems, thousands of species, all connected by trade routes and communication networks. What if we took away both of those advantages? Tanaka said. What if we showed the entire galaxy what the Council has done? What if we revealed the truth about the 17 species? What if we proved that the Council's integration process is nothing but slavery? The leaders looked at each other. Hope began to flicker in their eyes. We've been working on something, Tanaka continued. A communication system based on quantum entanglement. It can transmit information instantaneously across any distance. The Council doesn't know we have it. They don't even know it's possible. She pulled up a schematic of the system. It was humanity's greatest secret. A network of communication satellites hidden throughout the solar system, capable of broadcasting a signal to every corner of the galaxy simultaneously. We built this for emergencies, Tanaka said. We never imagined we would need it so soon, but it gives us an opportunity that no other species has ever had. We can tell our story to everyone. We can expose the Council's lies, and we can do it before they have a chance to silence us. Premier Liu leaned forward. And then what? Exposing the truth will not stop 600 warships. No, Tanaka agreed. But it will change the context of our fight. Right now, the Council can claim they are bringing order to a chaotic species. If we expose them first, they become the aggressors. Other species will see what they really are. Some might even help us, or they might be too afraid to act, Okonkwo said. Perhaps. But fear can change to anger very quickly, especially when people learn they have been lied to for millennia. President Morrison stood up. There's something else you haven't mentioned, Admiral. Even if we expose the Council, even if we rally the galaxy to our side, we still have to survive the initial attack. 600 warships, remember? How do we stop them? Tanaka smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a predator that had been hiding its true strength. Project Prometheus, she said. The room went silent. Project Prometheus was Earth's most classified military program. Even most of the people in this room did not know the details. For the past 5 years, we have been developing a weapon system unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen, Tanaka explained. Gravity spike drones. Small, undetectable, capable of creating localized gravitational anomalies that can disable any ship within range. She pulled up images of the drones. Sleek black machines, no larger than a human coffin, packed with technology that pushed the limits of known physics. We have 300 of them, Tanaka continued. They were launched months ago on ballistic trajectories, completely silent, completely invisible. Right now, they are positioning themselves around the Council's fleet. She looked at the assembled leaders, her eyes hard with determination. The Council thinks they are hunting us. They do not realize that we have been hunting them. President Morrison sat back in his chair. For the first time since the meeting began, there was a spark of hope in his eyes. What do you need from us, Admiral? I need authorization to proceed, Tanaka said. I need you to trust me, and I need you to understand that what we do next will change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. We will not be the prey the Council expects us to be. We will show them and everyone else exactly what humans are capable of. The leaders looked at each other. Silent messages passed between them. Decisions were made without words. Finally, Morrison nodded. You have our authorization, Admiral Tanaka. Do what needs to be done. Tanaka saluted. Yes, sir. And I promise you this. When this is over, the galaxy will know our name. Not as victims, not as servants, As equals, she turned and walked out of the chamber, her mind already racing through the thousands of details that needed to be coordinated. In 2 days, the council would expect an answer. They were going to get one, but it would not be the answer they expected. Outside the bunker, Tanaka looked up at the night sky. The stars glittered above her, cold and distant. Somewhere out there, 600 warships waited to destroy her world. 12 ancient rulers plotted humanity's enslavement. A galaxy of species lived in ignorance of the truth. All of that was about to change. "We're coming for you," Tanaka whispered to the stars. "And you have no idea what you've woken up." Then she walked back inside. There was work to be done. The next 48 hours would decide the fate of humanity, and Yuki Tanaka intended to make sure that fate was one her species had chosen for themselves, not one forced upon them by tyrants who had mistaken humanity's youth for weakness. That mistake was about to cost the Council everything. The 7th day arrived with the cold silence of space. Ambassador Valeth stood in her ship's communication center, waiting for the signal from Earth. In a few hours, the humans would give their answer, and then the combined armada would move. She had spent the past 2 days preparing her departure. Her ship was ready to leave Earth's orbit at a moment's notice. She had no desire to be anywhere near this system when the attack began, but something troubled her. Something she could not name. The humans had been too quiet. After their initial discussions, they had retreated into silence. No more questions about the treaty. No more negotiations. No more desperate attempts to change the terms. It was as if they had stopped caring about the outcome. That worried Valeth more than anything else. In her experience, species facing extinction did not become calm. They panicked. They fought. They begged. Humans were doing none of those things. Her communication console chirped. A message from High Counselor Rethvan. "The fleet is in final position," Rethvan's voice said through the speaker. "Our admirals report full readiness. As soon as the humans reject the treaty, we will commence the operation. Estimated time to complete subjugation: 16 hours. Understood," Valeth replied. "I will inform you as soon as we receive Earth's response." The connection closed. Valeth stared at the blank screen for a long moment, then turned to look out the viewport at the blue planet below. Earth. Such a small world. Such a young species. In a few hours, they would learn what it meant to challenge the natural order of the galaxy. At exactly noon, Greenwich Mean Time, the humans made their move, but it was not the move anyone expected. Across the galaxy, communication systems suddenly came alive. Every species, every world, every ship with a receiver, picked up the same signal at the same instant. It was impossible signals could not travel faster than light, and yet there it was, broadcasting on every frequency, in every language, in formats that every species could understand. A human woman appeared on screens throughout the galaxy. She wore a military uniform decorated with medals and ribbons. Her face was calm, but hard, like stone carved by centuries of wind. Behind her stood the flags of every nation on Earth, united for the first time in human history. "My name is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Space Defense Force," she began. "I am speaking to every sentient being in the galaxy. What I am about to tell you will change everything you think you know about the Galactic Council." On her ship in orbit around Earth, Ambassador Valeth stumbled backward in shock. How was this possible? Humans had only possessed FTL technology for 3 years. They should not have been able to create a simultaneous broadcast across the entire galaxy. But there it was. Proof that everything the Council believed about humanity was wrong. For the past 7 days, the Galactic Council has been negotiating with Earth, Tanaka continued. They presented us with what they called standard integration terms. They told us that all new species must accept restrictions during a probationary period. They told us this was normal, expected, part of the process of joining galactic civilization. Her eyes hardened. They lied. The screen behind her changed, showing the Council's own records, images of the hidden fleet, transcripts of the Council's private deliberations, the faces of the 12 counselors as they discussed humanity's enslavement. "What you are seeing is classified intelligence from the Galactic Council's own archives," Tanaka said. "It proves that the integration process is not about helping new species join civilization. It is about crushing them before they can become a threat to the Council's power." She stepped aside, letting the evidence speak for itself. The recording of High Counselor Rethven played across billions of screens. His contemptuous words echoed through the galaxy. Humans are infant predators. They must be declawed before they learn to hunt. Species across the galaxy watched in stunned silence. Many of them had been raised to respect the Council. They had been taught that the elder races were wise and benevolent. They had believed the lies for thousands of years. Now they were seeing the truth. This is not the first time the Council has done this, Tanaka continued. Over the past 40,000 years, they have targeted 17 species. Every one of those species was destroyed, subjugated, or reduced to servitude. Their cultures were erased. Their potential was crushed. And the galaxy was told nothing. Images appeared on the screen. The Velthari, working in Korvathi factories, their warrior spirit broken. The Drithani, living in slums on their own homeworld while their cities lay in ruins. The Orinthi, their language forbidden, their children taught to forget their heritage. You have been told that these species integrated peacefully into galactic society, Tanaka said. That is a lie. They were conquered, enslaved, destroyed. And the Council has been planning to do the same thing to humanity. On the bridge of the Combined Armada's flagship, Admiral Kreshtar of the Korvathi watched the broadcast with growing horror. This was not supposed to happen. The humans were supposed to be ignorant, helpless, easy to control. Shut down this transmission, he ordered. Now, his communications officer worked frantically at her console. I cannot, Admiral. They are using some kind of quantum entanglement technology. We cannot block it. We cannot trace it. We cannot stop it. Kreshtar's blood ran cold. Quantum entanglement communication was theoretical. The Council's own scientists had declared it impossible. And yet the humans had not only developed it, they had kept it secret until the perfect moment to use it. What else had they been hiding? The broadcast continued. To the species of the galaxy, Tanaka said. I want you to understand something. Earth does not seek war. We do not seek empire. We want only what every species wants. The freedom to grow, to explore, to become what we are meant to be. We were willing to join the galactic community as equals. The Council refused to allow that. She paused, letting her words sink in. At this moment, 600 warships of the Combined Armada are hidden at the edge of our solar system. They have been waiting there for weeks, ready to attack the moment we rejected the Council's terms. The Council planned to destroy our fleet, bomb our cities, and enslave our people. All because we had the audacity to develop too quickly. She looked directly into the camera. Her eyes seemed to reach through the screen, touching every viewer, every species, every soul across the galaxy. But we have a message for the Council, and we have a message for the galaxy. The screen behind her changed to show a tactical display of the Sol system. Earth at the center, the human fleet scattered throughout, and at the edge, the 600 icons of the Combined Armada. But there was something else on the display. 300 smaller icons, arranged in a perfect sphere around the enemy fleet. You see those small contacts surrounding the Council's armada? Tanaka said. Those are Project Prometheus drones. They have been in position for months, waiting for this moment. Each one carries an experimental gravity spike weapon, capable of disabling any ship within range. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. But somehow it seemed even louder than before. To the admirals of the Combined Armada. Your fleet is surrounded. Your ships are targeted. Your options are limited. You came here expecting to find an easy prey. You found something else. She straightened, her posture radiating absolute confidence. To the Galactic Council, you have lied to the galaxy for 40,000 years. You have crushed 17 species. You have built an empire on fear and deception. That ends today. She paused. You assumed humanity would cower. You assumed we would negotiate. You assumed we were like the others, isolated, alone, unaware. You were wrong on all counts. We know where your fleet is. We know your attack timeline. And we know something you don't. Her smile was not kind. It was not forgiving. It was the smile of a species that had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every single day. You should have struck first. She let those words hang in the air for a long moment. To the galaxy, we are not asking you to fight for us. We are not asking you to join our war. We are simply asking you to watch. Watch what happens when the Council faces a species they cannot control. Watch what happens when their lies are exposed. Watch what happens when the hunters become the hunted. She took a deep breath. and to the 17 species that the Council has enslaved. Your chains are about to be broken. Your oppressors are about to fall. And when this is over, there will be a place for you, in a new galactic order, one where every species, regardless of age or power, has an equal voice. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, silence fell. Billions of beings stared at their screens, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The Galactic Council, exposed as tyrants, the humans, revealed as something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined, and the promise of a new order, rising from the ashes of the old. On the subjugated worlds of the Velthari, the Drithani, and the Orinthi, something began to stir. Something that had been sleeping for centuries. Something the Council had tried very hard to destroy. Hope. In the Council chamber, chaos erupted. The 12 counselors shouted over each other, their voices rising in panic and anger. How did they know? Counselor Sirath demanded. How did they know about the fleet? How did they know about the 17 species? They hacked our systems, Rethvan said, his gray face pale with shock. Somehow, they accessed our most secure databases. They know everything, and now the entire galaxy knows, Counselor Threnix said bitterly. Every species we have subjugated, every ally we have cultivated, every trade partner we have manipulated. They all saw that broadcast. What do we do? Valith asked. She had returned to the Council chamber as soon as her ship could make the journey. Her voice trembled with something that might have been fear or might have been something else entirely. Rethvan slammed his hand on the arm of his seat. We proceed with the attack. The humans may have exposed us, but they cannot defeat 600 warships. Once we have destroyed their fleet and subjugated their world, we can control the narrative. We will tell the galaxy that the broadcast was a desperate lie. We will show them that humanity was the real threat. And if the galaxy does not believe us? Valith asked quietly. Rethvan turned his cold eyes toward her. Then we will do what we have always done. We will maintain order. By force, if necessary. He turned to the communication console and opened a channel to the combined armada. Admiral Kreshtar, he said, begin the attack. On the flagship of the combined armada, Admiral Kreshtar received the order with a heavy heart. He was a soldier. He had served the Council for 300 years. He had led fleets in a dozen campaigns against species that threatened galactic stability. He had always believed that he was doing the right thing, that he was protecting civilization from chaos. But now, after watching the human broadcast, he was no longer sure. The 17 species. He had not known the truth about them. He had been told they were dangerous, unstable, a threat to themselves and others. He had believed the Council's propaganda, just like everyone else. How many lies had he helped enforce? How many species had he helped destroy? But orders were orders. He had sworn an oath to serve the Council, and despite his doubts, he could not simply refuse. All ships, he said, his voice heavy with reluctance. Prepare to engage. Target the human fleet. Minimize civilian casualties where possible. He paused, then added, and may the ancestors forgive us for what we are about to do. The combined armada began to move. 600 warships, the most powerful military force in galactic history, advancing toward Earth. But as they moved, something strange happened. Across the galaxy, the subjugated species began to act. On Velthar, factory workers stopped their machines and gathered in the streets. On Drethan, the survivors of the occupation emerged from hiding and began to organize. On Orinth, the forbidden language was spoken aloud for the first time in centuries. The Council had spent 40,000 years building an empire on fear and lies. In a single broadcast, humanity had begun to tear it down. And on the bridge of Admiral Tanaka's flagship, the response was calm and measured. The enemy fleet is advancing, her tactical officer reported. They will be within weapons range in approximately 2 hours. Tanaka nodded. Status of Project Prometheus? All drones are in position. Gravity spike weapons are charged and ready. Tanaka looked at the tactical display. 600 enemy ships, 300 human drones. The math seemed impossible, but the Council had made a critical mistake. They had judged humanity by the standards of other species. They had assumed that a young species with limited resources could never match the technology of ancient empires. They had forgotten that necessity was the mother of invention. They had forgotten that humans had spent their entire history facing impossible odds and finding ways to survive, and they had forgotten the most important lesson of all. Never corner a predator. Wait for my signal, Tanaka said. Let them come. Let them think they have already won. She watched the enemy fleet advance, her face calm, her heart steady. In a few hours, the galaxy would witness something it had never seen before. A young species, fighting back against 40,000 years of tyranny, and winning. The combined armada moved through space like a storm of iron and fire. 600 warships, each one a masterpiece of ancient technology. Each one carrying enough firepower to devastate a continent. The Corvathi dreadnoughts led the formation, their gray hulls bristling with weapons that had been refined over millennia. Behind them came the Sindari cruisers, elegant and deadly, their energy weapons capable of cutting through any known material. The Mindari carriers brought up the rear, their massive hangars filled with thousands of fighter craft ready to swarm over any opposition. Admiral Kreshtar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Corvathi vessel Inevitable Victory, and watched Earth grow larger in his view screen. Such a small world, such a young species. In a few hours, they would learn what it meant to defy the natural order of the galaxy. And yet, something about this mission felt wrong. The humans were not running. They were not hiding. Their fleet remained in formation around their homeworld, waiting, as if they expected the armada to come to them. That was not the behavior of a species facing extinction. That was the behavior of a species with a plan. Kreshtar pushed the thought aside. The Council had ordered the attack. The humans had exposed the Council's secrets. There was no turning back now, regardless of his personal doubts. Status report, he commanded. His tactical officer, a young Corvathi named Thesson, checked her displays. All ships report ready, Admiral. We will be within weapons range in approximately 45 minutes. The human fleet appears to be holding position. No signs of aggressive maneuvers. What about those drones the human mentioned in her broadcast? Project Prometheus? Thesson frowned. Our sensors cannot detect them, Admiral. If they exist, they are using some form of stealth technology beyond our ability to penetrate. Kreshtar's jaw tightened. Another impossibility. The humans had already demonstrated capabilities that the Council had believed were centuries beyond their development. Quantum entanglement communication, stealth technology. What else were they hiding? Continue the advance, he ordered. But increase scanner sensitivity to maximum. I want to know the moment anything unusual appears. The armada pressed forward. 40 minutes to weapons range, 30, 20. On the bridge of the human flagship, Admiral Yuki Tanaka watched the approaching fleet with calm, calculating eyes. She had spent her entire life preparing for moments like this. Every war game, every simulation, every battle she had ever fought had been building toward this single point in time. The survival of her species depended on the next few minutes, and she was ready. Enemy fleet is 15 minutes from weapons range, her tactical officer reported. They're maintaining standard formation. No signs they've detected our drones. Good. Tanaka turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to all Prometheus units. Authorization code. Prometheus 77 Alpha. Channel open, Admiral. Tanaka took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would determine humanity's future. All Prometheus units, this is Admiral Tanaka. Stand by for activation. On my command, you will execute Protocol Theta. Repeat. Protocol Theta. Acknowledge. 300 confirmations came back. 300 drones, scattered in a perfect sphere around the enemy fleet. Their gravity spike weapons charged and ready. The Council had spent months planning this attack. They had studied human technology, analyzed human tactics, calculated human weaknesses. They had built a fleet specifically designed to crush Earth's defenses. They had never considered that humanity might already have a counter-strategy in place. 10 minutes to weapons range. Thesson reported on the Inevitable Victory. Admiral Kreshtar nodded. In a few minutes, the combined armada would open fire. The human fleet would fall. Earth would be surrounded, and the Council's authority would be restored. Something flickered on the edge of his vision. What was that? He demanded. Thesson checked her displays. Her face went pale. Admiral, I'm detecting energy signatures. Hundreds of them. They're appearing all around the fleet. Kreshtar spun to face the main view screen. And what he saw stopped his heart. 300 objects had appeared out of nowhere, arranged in a perfect sphere around the armada. They were small, no larger than a shuttle, but they pulsed with an energy signature that made the inevitable victory's sensors scream with warnings. "What are they?" Kreshtar demanded. Before anyone could answer, Admiral Tanaka's voice echoed through every speaker on every ship in the combined armada. "To the admirals of the Galactic Council's fleet, this is your final warning. Stand down your weapons. Surrender your ships. You have 30 seconds to comply." Kreshtar stared at the viewscreen in disbelief. The humans were demanding surrender? From a fleet that outnumbered them 3-1? They were bluffing. They had to be bluffing. "All ships, ignore the human transmission," he ordered. "Continue the advance. Prepare to open fire. 20 seconds, Tanaka's voice said calmly. The armada pressed forward. The drones remained motionless, floating in space like stars that had forgotten how to shine. 10 seconds. Kreshtar gripped the arms of his command chair. His instincts screamed at him to stop, to wait, to think. But he was committed now. The council had given their orders. There was no turning back. 5 seconds. On every ship in the armada, crews held their breath. Something terrible was about to happen. They could feel it in their bones. "Time's up," Tanaka said, and then the universe screamed. The Prometheus drones activated simultaneously. Each one created a localized gravitational anomaly, a point in space where the normal rules of physics simply stopped working. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. On the inevitable victory, every system failed at once. Lights went dark, engines died, weapons powered down, navigation screens went blank, the ship's artificial gravity flickered wildly, sending crew members tumbling across the deck. Kreshtar was thrown from his chair. He hit the floor hard, the impact driving the breath from his lungs. Around him, his bridge crew scrambled for handholds as the ship lurched and spun without power. "Report!" he gasped. "What's happening?" No one answered. The communication systems were dead. The sensors were dead. Everything was dead. On the view screen still functional on emergency power, Kreshtar could see the rest of the fleet. 600 warships, the pride of 9 species, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, drifting helplessly in the void. The battle had lasted 14 seconds, and humanity had won. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Tanaka allowed herself a small smile. "Confirm status of all Prometheus units," she ordered. "All units report successful activation," her tactical officer said, his voice shaking with relief. "The enemy fleet is completely disabled. Engines, weapons, shields, everything is offline. They're sitting ducks. Casualties? None on our side. We're detecting life signs on all enemy vessels. The gravity spikes caused some injuries, but nothing fatal." Tanaka nodded. That was important. She had not wanted to kill thousands of soldiers who were just following orders. She had wanted to prove a point. The point had been proven. "Launch boarding parties," she ordered. "Standard capture protocols. Secure all vessels. Treat prisoners humanely, but take no chances. And get me a direct line to Admiral Kreshtar. I want to speak with him personally." The human fleet moved in. Dozens of assault shuttles launched from carriers, speeding toward the disabled enemy ships. Marines in powered armor prepared to breach airlocks and take control of vessels that their enemies had expected would never be threatened. On the inevitable victory, Admiral Kreshtar had managed to restore emergency power to the bridge. He stood at the viewport, watching the human shuttles approach, and felt something he had not felt in 300 years of military service. Defeat. Complete, absolute, and total defeat. His fleet had been rendered helpless without a single shot being fired. His crews were trapped in ships that could not fight, could not flee, could not even communicate with each other. The most powerful armada in galactic history had been beaten by a species that had only possessed FTL technology for 3 years. How? How was this possible? The answer came to him, slowly, painfully, like a wound that would not stop bleeding. The Council had been wrong about everything. They had judged humanity by the standards of other species. They had assumed that development followed predictable patterns, that younger species could never match the technology of elder races. They had built their entire strategy on the assumption that humans were primitive, foolish, weak. They had not understood what humanity really was. Humans did not think like other species. They did not develop like other species. They came from a world that had tried to kill them over and over again: ice ages, extinctions, plagues, wars, and each time, they had adapted. They had learned. They had become stronger. The Council had looked at humanity's short lifespans and seen a weakness. They had not realized that those short lives forced humans to think faster, act faster, achieve faster. A human scientist might have only 50 productive years to contribute to their field, so they compressed centuries of work into decades. The Council had looked at humanity's violent history and seen chaos. They had not realized that constant conflict had made humans the most experienced warriors in the galaxy. They had been fighting wars since before they discovered fire. They knew things about strategy and tactics that the elder species had forgotten millennia ago. The Council had looked at humanity's youth and seen an easy target. They had not realized that they were looking at a predator that had spent its entire existence learning how to survive against impossible odds. The communication console crackled to life. Admiral Tanaka's face appeared on the screen. "Admiral Kreshtar," she said. "I think it's time we talked." Kreshtar stared at her. This woman, this human, had just accomplished something that no one in the galaxy had ever done. She had defeated the Council's armada without firing a single weapon. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice heavy with resignation. "I want you to surrender your fleet," Tanaka replied. "Formally and officially. I want you to order your crews to stand down and accept boarding parties peacefully. And I want you to understand something." She leaned forward, her eyes burning with an intensity that made Kreshtar's blood run cold. "Humanity does not seek the destruction of your people. We do not want to build an empire on the graves of other species. We simply want to be free. Free to grow, to explore, to become what we are meant to be. The Council tried to take that freedom away from us. We have proven that they cannot." She paused. "But this is not about revenge. This is about justice. For the 17 species the Council enslaved. For the billions of beings who have lived in fear for millennia. For everyone who ever looked at the stars and wondered if there was more to the universe than tyranny." Kreshtar was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I will order my crews to stand down," he said. "We will accept your boarding parties. But I must ask you something, Admiral." "Ask. What happens now? To my people? To the Council? To the galaxy?" Tanaka's expression softened slightly. "That depends on your people, Admiral, and on the Council, and on every species that has been watching this day. We have shown the galaxy that the Council can be defeated. What they do with that knowledge is up to them." She straightened. "But I can tell you this. There will be no more subjugation. No more integration treaties designed to enslave younger species. No more lies. No more deception. No more tyranny hiding behind the mask of order. The galaxy is about to change, and humanity will be part of that change as equals, not as masters." The communication ended. Kreshtar stood alone on his darkened bridge, listening to the distant sounds of human boarding parties moving through his ship. He thought about the Council, about Rethvan and his cold certainty, about the 17 species, broken and enslaved, about the galaxy that had accepted these crimes because it was easier than fighting back, and he thought about the humans. This strange, young, impossibly stubborn species that had refused to accept their fate. Maybe, he thought, the galaxy needed to change. Maybe it was time for something new. On Earth, the news of the victory spread like wildfire. In every city, on every continent, people stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. Their fleet had won. Their species had survived. The threat that had loomed over them for the past week had been defeated in less than a minute. But it was more than just survival. It was a statement, a message to the galaxy that humanity would not be contained, would not be controlled, would not be crushed. In Geneva, Director Chen Wei stood on the steps of the Parliament building and watched the celebration unfold. Tears streamed down her face, tears of relief, of joy, of overwhelming emotion. She thought about her conversation with Ambassador Valeth. She had known, even then, that something terrible was coming. She had tried to prepare herself for the worst, but she had not prepared for this. For victory, for hope. Her communicator buzzed. "A message from Admiral Tanaka, Director Chen. The enemy fleet has surrendered. We are currently securing their vessels and treating their crews as prisoners of war. I expect to have full control of the armada within 6 hours." Chen's hands trembled as she replied, "Admiral, I don't know what to say. You saved us. You saved everyone. I did my duty. Tanaka replied. But this is only the beginning. The Council still exists. The galaxy is still watching. We have proven that we can fight. Now we need to prove that we can build something better. Chen nodded, even though Tanaka could not see her. Whatever comes next, Admiral. We're ready. I know, Tanaka said. That's what makes us human. The communication ended. Chen looked up at the sky, where the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening evening. Somewhere out there, 600 enemy ships were surrendering to human crews. Somewhere out there, alien soldiers were learning that their unbeatable armada had been beaten. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was waking up to a new reality. A reality where the young species were no longer prey. A reality where the hunters had become the hunted. A reality where humanity had taken its place among the stars, not as servants, not as slaves, but as equals. And this was only the beginning. The galaxy burned with the fire of revolution. It started small protests on a dozen worlds. Whispers in dark corners. Questions that had been forbidden for millennia suddenly spoken aloud. But within days, those sparks had grown into an inferno that no one could control. On Velthar, the homeworld of the first species the Council had subjugated, the factories fell silent. Workers who had spent their entire lives serving Korvathi masters walked away from their machines and gathered in the streets. They had seen the human broadcast. They had watched the combined armada surrender, and for the first time in 15,000 years, they believed that freedom was possible. The Korvathi overseers tried to restore order. They deployed their security forces, made threats, promised punishments. But the Velthari did not listen. They had spent too many generations being afraid. The fear was still there. But something else had grown stronger. Hope. On Drethan, the survivors of the occupation emerged from hiding. For 8,000 years, the Drethani had been forced to live in the ruins of their own cities, forbidden from rebuilding, forbidden from advancing, forbidden from being what they once were. But now they walked openly through streets that had been off limits for millennia. They found their old temples, half buried under centuries of neglect. They found their ancient libraries, the books moldy but still readable. They found the graves of their ancestors, the warriors, the philosophers, the artists who had dreamed of building an empire among the stars, and they remembered who they were. On Orinth, the forbidden language was spoken aloud. Children learned words that their parents had never dared to teach them. Songs that had been illegal for 5,000 years echoed through villages and cities. The Orinthi danced in their squares and wept with joy, because for the first time in their history, they were not afraid. Across the galaxy, similar scenes unfolded. The 17 subjugated species, long believed to be broken beyond repair, rose up as one. They had seen the human victory. They had heard the promise of a new order, and they were ready to fight for their freedom. The Council watched in horror as their empire crumbled. In the great hall on their capital world, the 12 counselors gathered for what would be their final meeting. The holographic displays showed reports from across the galaxy, uprisings, protests, defections. Species that had been loyal allies for millennia were now demanding answers. Trade routes had collapsed. Military units refused orders. The entire structure that the Council had built over 40,000 years was coming apart at the seams. High Counselor Rethvan sat in his seat, his gray face twisted with rage and disbelief. "This is impossible," he snarled. "We have maintained order for 40,000 years. We cannot lose control because of one failed operation." "It was not just one operation," Counselor Cyrith replied. Her voice was tired, defeated. "It was everything. The lies, the subjugations, the constant manipulation. The humans exposed all of it. The galaxy knows the truth now, and they will not forget." "Then we make them forget," Rethvan said. "We deploy our remaining fleets. We crush the rebellions. We restore order." "With what fleets?" Counselor Threnix asked bitterly. "The combined armada was the largest military force we had. It is now in human hands. Our remaining ships are scattered across 1,000 systems, trying to maintain control of territories that no longer wish to be controlled. And even if we could gather those ships," Valith added quietly, "who would we send them against? The Velthari? The Drethani? Every species we have wronged for the past 40 millennia. We would need to subjugate half the galaxy." "Then that is what we will do," Rethvan roared. "We did not build this empire by showing weakness. We built it through strength, through determination, through the willingness to do what was necessary. Valeth stood up. Her silver hair seemed to glow in the dim light, and her blue eyes were filled with a conviction that surprised even herself. "No," she said. The other counselors turned to stare at her. "What did you say?" Rethvan demanded. "I said no." Valeth's voice was calm but firm. "I will not support another campaign of subjugation. I will not help you crush species that are only asking for the freedom that should have been theirs all along." She walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "I have served this council for 800 years. I have delivered treaties that were designed to enslave. I have watched species lose their identities, their cultures, their futures. I told myself it was necessary. I told myself it was for the greater good. I told myself that the council knew best." She looked at Rethvan with eyes that no longer held any respect for his authority. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. And now we have to face the consequences of what we have done." Rethvan's face contorted with fury. "You would betray your own people? Your own species?" "I am not betraying anyone," Valeth replied. "I am trying to save us. If we continue down this path, if we try to crush the rebellions and restore control through force, we will destroy ourselves. The galaxy will unite against us. And we will fall, just as every empire built on tyranny eventually falls." She turned to address the other counselors. "But if we change, if we admit our mistakes and work toward a better future, there may still be a place for us in the new order. Not as masters, not as rulers, but as equals among equals." The chamber was silent. The counselors looked at each other, their ancient faces showing emotions they had not felt in centuries. Fear, doubt, and, perhaps, the first faint stirrings of remorse. Then Rethvan laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. "You think the humans will accept us as equals? After everything we have done? They will destroy us the moment they have the chance." "No," Valeth said. "They will not. Because they are better than we are." 3 weeks after the battle, Admiral Yuki Tanaka received a visitor on her flagship. Ambassador Valeth had requested an audience through official channels. She had come alone, without guards, without weapons, without the diplomatic protocols that usually accompanied a meeting between species. She was brought to Tanaka's private quarters, where the admiral waited by a large viewport overlooking the captured combined armada. 600 ships floated in neat formations, their crews now housed in comfortable detention facilities on Mars. "Ambassador," Tanaka said, "I wasn't sure you would come." "I wasn't sure either," Valeth admitted. She looked smaller than Tanaka, remembered older. Somehow, despite the Sindari's extended lifespan. "But I had to. There are things that need to be said." Tanaka gestured to a chair. Valeth sat down slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. "I came to apologize," she said, "for the treaty, for the deception, for everything the council planned to do to your people." Tanaka studied her for a long moment. "You were following orders." "That is not an excuse," Valeth replied. "I knew the truth. I knew what the integration process really meant. I told myself it was necessary, that the galaxy needed order, that younger species needed guidance, that the council knew best. But deep down, I knew it was wrong. I just didn't have the courage to say so." She looked up at Tanaka with eyes that glistened with unshed tears. "You showed me what courage looks like, Admiral. You and your people. You faced an impossible situation, and instead of surrendering, you found a way to win. You exposed the truth when no one else would. You stood up to an empire that has ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years. She paused. "I should have done that centuries ago, when I first realized what the council really was. But I was afraid, and because of my fear, millions of beings have suffered." Tanaka was silent for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the viewport. "Do you know why we won?" she asked quietly. Valeth shook her head. "It wasn't because of our technology. It wasn't because of our weapons. It wasn't even because of our determination." Tanaka turned to face her. "We won because the council made a mistake. They looked at humanity and saw prey. They saw a young species, weak and vulnerable, ready to be controlled." She stepped closer to Valeth. "They didn't see us for what we really are." "And what is that?" Valeth asked. Tanaka's smile was not cruel. It was not triumphant. It was simply honest. "We are survivors," she said. "Our world has tried to kill us 1,000 times. Ice ages, volcanoes, asteroids, diseases. We have faced extinction over and over again. And every time, we have refused to die. That stubbornness is written into our genes. It is part of who we are. She sat down across from Valeth. The council saw our short lifespans and thought we were weak. They didn't understand that our short lives are why we move so fast. We don't have centuries to plan and build and wait. We have decades, so we learn to think quickly, to act quickly, to achieve in years what other species take centuries to accomplish. She leaned forward. You looked at humanity and saw infant predators that needed to be declawed. You didn't realize we were the monsters your ancestors told stories about. Valeth flinched at the words Reithvan's words, thrown back at her. I know, she whispered. I know what we thought. And we were wrong. Yes, Tanaka agreed. You were. But that doesn't mean you have to stay wrong. She reached out and took Valeth's hands. The Sindari ambassador stiffened in surprise. Such intimate contact was rare in her culture, but she did not pull away. The galaxy is changing, Tanaka said. The old order is falling apart. The subjugated species are rising up. The council's authority is crumbling. In a few months, everything will be different. What do you want from us? Valeth asked. From the council? From my people? I want what I said in my broadcast, Tanaka replied. A new galactic assembly, one where every species has an equal voice. No more empires, no more subjugation, no more lies, just cooperation, mutual respect, and the freedom to grow. She squeezed Valeth's hands. The council can be part of that future. The elder species have knowledge and experience that younger species need. You could help build something better instead of fighting to preserve something that was never really good. Valeth stared at her. You would accept us? After everything we have done? Not accept, Tanaka said. Forgiveness is not mine to give, that belongs to the species you have wronged. But I can offer you a chance. A chance to prove that the elder species can change. A chance to be part of a new beginning instead of clinging to a poisoned past. She released Valeth's hands and stood up. The choice is yours. And it's a choice you will have to make soon. The galaxy is watching, Ambassador. They want to see what the council will do now that their power has been broken. Valeth sat in silence for a long time. Through the viewport, she could see the captured armada, the ships that had been meant to destroy Earth, now floating peacefully under human control. She could see the blue marble of Earth in the distance, the tiny world that had produced such an extraordinary species, and she could see, in her mind's eye, the future that Tanaka was offering. A future where the old divisions were healed, where species worked together instead of dominating each other, where the galaxy finally fulfilled its potential. It would not be easy. The elder species would resist. The subjugated species would demand justice. There would be conflicts, negotiations, setbacks, and struggles, but it was possible. For the first time in 40,000 years, it was actually possible. What do you need from me? Valeth asked finally. Tanaka smiled. Go back to the council. Tell them what I told you. Make them understand that there is a path forward, but it requires them to change. It requires them to admit what they have done and commit to being better. And if they refuse, then they will be left behind. The galaxy is moving forward with or without them. The question is whether they want to be part of the future or remembered only as the mistakes of the past. Valeth stood up. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin, not with arrogance, but with determination. I will try, she said. I cannot promise they will listen, but I will try. That's all anyone can do, Tanaka replied. She walked Valeth to the door of her quarters. Before the ambassador left, she turned back one final time. Admiral, may I ask you something? Of course. Were you ever afraid? When you faced the Armada? When you made your broadcast? When you challenged an empire that has ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years? Were you ever afraid? Tanaka thought about the question. She thought about the sleepless nights, the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that the fate of her entire species rested on her decisions. Every moment, she admitted. Fear is part of being human. We feel it just as strongly as any other species, maybe more strongly, because we know how fragile we are, how easily we can be destroyed. She smiled. But we have learned something about fear. Something that the council never understood. What is that? Fear is not weakness, Tanaka said. Fear is a tool. It tells us what is important, what we need to protect, what we are willing to fight for. The council tried to use fear to control the galaxy. They did not realize that they were teaching the galaxy how powerful fear can be. She stepped closer to Valeth. You wanted to know what makes humanity different? It is not our technology, our determination, or our stubbornness. It is this. We have learned to be afraid of the right things. We are afraid of slavery. We are afraid of losing our freedom. We are afraid of becoming the kind of species that builds empires on the suffering of others. She met Valeth's eyes. And that fear drives us to do extraordinary things. To stand up when we should surrender. To fight when we should flee. To change the galaxy when we should accept our fate. Valeth nodded slowly. I think I understand. I hope you do, Tanaka said. Because the galaxy needs species that are afraid of the right things. Not afraid of change. Not afraid of equality. Not afraid of letting go of power. She opened the door. Go and tell the council. Tell them that the age of empires is over. Tell them that a new day is dawning. And tell them that they can either join us in building something better, or they can be remembered as the last rulers of a broken age. Valeth walked through the door. She paused in the corridor, looking back at the human admiral one last time. Thank you, Admiral Tanaka, for everything. Thank me when it's over, Tanaka replied. We still have a long way to go. The door closed. Valeth walked down the corridor toward the shuttle bay, her mind filled with everything she had heard. Behind her, Admiral Yuki Tanaka returned to the viewport and looked out at the stars. The galaxy was changing. The old order was falling. And humanity stood at the center of it all, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as catalysts. The spark that had set the fire, the voice that had broken the silence. It would take years, perhaps decades, to build the new order. There would be struggles and setbacks, conflicts and compromises. But for the first time in 40,000 years, the future was not written by the few. It would be written by everyone. Tanaka smiled and whispered to the stars, we were never prey. We were never the hunted. We were always the monsters in the dark, waiting for our moment. She turned away from the viewport, and now that moment has come. Far below, on Earth, a new generation looked up at the sky with wonder in their eyes. They had watched their species face extinction and emerge victorious. They had seen the impossible become possible, and they knew, with absolute certainty, that this was only the beginning. The galaxy belonged to everyone now, and humanity would help make sure it stayed that way.